Hello, Northwood scholars. I want to do a quick video here. I have it on slides because it just works easier with the formatting at work here. And this is a longer version. When I teach the class live, we kind of have those couple of weeks and they all roll together. And so obviously I broke it down in the last couple of weeks. It's like we're still in that core of our learning here. And I want to stay with rhetoric and ethics, but I want to skip around a little bit in this middle because you've already done the rhetorical work. So I want to kind of bring it back. Um, I like this quote here. The two criteria identified by Richard Weaver. First, rhetoric should be grounded in sound logic. And that's always to me, like when you think about Aristotle, it's always very logical. And then the other, I think more importantly, the second part, rhetoric should move people toward the good. So I guess what I'm saying is you have an advantage just taking this class, just going through a couple of months. If you're putting the work in, and I know you are, you're going to have an advantage over other people in understanding. It's almost like you're getting a power. And now it's, can you use it right? And can you use it for good? So I'm going to skip around like on these slides here. Uh, I like this these little tips here. I have some more at the end as well. It says consider how many people actually think. Um, there's a lot more of them than there are us. You're college educated. Many of you, as you commented this term, are finishing up. You're going to take that walk, as I like to say, get that degree. So just remember this, that you can't just say, I'm educated, you're not, because you're not going to win your arguments that way, and you might not even be doing it ethically in the right way in that sense. Remember, how are we influenced? That's the huge factor of this course that I think gets lost. We can talk about the abstraction ladder and intentional and extensional meanings. We'll bring that up, and value orientations, and of course deconstruction and all that relativism, and how does that fit in? But don't forget how I always call it the matrix, how it has you. Be aware of what makes you think the way you do in others. Okay. Um, and then this other thing, people do not like to be categorized right on the bottom there. Just remember that if you are communicating, it's almost unethical to do that. It's easy to say, oh, of course we don't just categorize based on a race or a sexual orientation or a gender. When you say, oh, look at all the women can handle it. I mean, we know this by now, but it goes beyond this. Be aware that people, and we're going to see with, when you get into status theory and the way people like to socialize, be very careful not to do that for them. If somebody wants to do it to themselves, and we do it too, but don't just categorize people. So I want to kind of scroll ahead here. This is some stuff you can see on the left, the whole matrix and the symbology, and you did the quizzes and all that. Of course, intentional orientations is something that was right from our text. Um, and the idea of being unaware of context. And I think this is a danger in communication where we generate meaning based on what's in our head. Now, obviously, that's based on whatever programming we have received, I suppose, in a sense. Um, but you have to be aware that the context of your situation for any communication is key. Where are you? Who are you dealing with? What do they know? How do they speak? From there, we can think about doing it right, doing it ethically. But even as Hayakawa says, you can have a dictionary and use a dictionary to keep defining every word, and eventually you could have unlimited words and you don't have meaning. So I think that's a big part of this course is realizing we don't have meanings. And then self-reflection, of course, be reflective and be aware that is there good or evil? That's a debate I don't know. That's something that I've addressed as a teacher of philosophy and writing and in regular philosophy courses. You will get arguments both ways. You will get people say, absolutely, there's good and evil. Don't even start, of course. And you'll get people say, no, it's all opinion. And maybe it has to apply to different situations. It also, again, the abstraction ladder. But if you're talking about actual application in communications, be aware of how you communicate when you say, oh, normal and good. One of the things that came up Recently, in a university setting, was someone had they had the gender orientations, and the school was going through with a chart, and somebody wrote cis, which is a category now they have of gender identification, and someone had written, "You mean normal?" Now, 50 years ago, that would have been just absolutely normal to write normal. But now be aware of that, because what you're doing is making a judgment about another group. So when you see this little slide, this little information that I have here, how much of what we call normal actually comes from, if truth exists? And I know I'm getting deep here. So I think ultimately it's the same as when I teach writing. It's better for me to try to get you to think in a certain way, to expand your critical thinking, to examine bigger philosophical concepts, maybe to move up higher on the abstraction ladder. And because of your awareness of all these schools of thought and theories, you then can be a better writer, you can be a better speaker, a better communicator. In other words, the trick isn't just in here, these are the words to say. The trick is in you experiencing actual learning and just experience in general. So it says, consider the survey. What does it tell you? So I looked at the work that was done in terms of what you feel. And you can see almost every dot, as I predicted, and I've seen every dot is hit, and you can see some heavier ones on there. And what does that tell you when you look? Men are overall tougher, more tough. And I always say women are tougher. Maybe men are physically tougher. That's my opinion. Um, but it just goes to show you that even in a class where you're saying, well, these are all Northwood students, you all have to be somewhat similar, and in classes, I look around and I see predominantly in this school, up in these schools up here, predominantly European, Anglo, whatever you want to call, of race, Christian. In previous sessions, like when I taught at Governor State, it was, to be honest, the biggest demographic were black women. And you would say, oh, okay, let's categorize. And that's the thing I'm saying not to do, because you can never say, oh, here's a race, here's a gender, here's a religion, because it doesn't matter. It spreads across. So if you have that understanding that ethically where you're coming from is not a place of normal, of right, of this social status, as we're going to talk about, then you have an advantage over others. So I want to kind of skip ahead. This is, if you look on the slides up here, you can see, I should go this way because how in the video, the work that you've done before. So that would combine, we combine that in the bigger personal classes. So I want to get to here and maybe just start the slideshow and go through the rest of this. Take me hopefully 10 minutes here. The orator, the speaker, may lead his hearers which way he list, and draw them to what affection he will. He may make them angry, to be pleased or laugh, to weep and lament, to love, abhor, and to loathe. I love doing those readings and in that voice, because it's true. When you get good, when you practice, you will be able to get people in the palm of your hand. Where I've had coworkers at meetings say, I don't even know what you said, but I agree with you. And that's the best way to do it. So let's kind of back up here, and I want to throw some tips at you and point out some areas of actual communication and some things more things to think about. So a problem child. Or a problem, the child throwing a tantrum. I had this, I brought this up because of my daughter. My daughter, when she was little, she's 28 years old at this point. When she was real little, she tried this one or two times, what you're seeing in the picture, in a store. And, they want something, or they want to go in the cart, or who knows. And I would say, you know what, cry harder. Come on. Um, maybe if you cry a little bit more, and even as she got older, I would use this, and it would instantly shut it off. I see this cheese throwing thing now with children. I don't advise that, and Northwood doesn't either. Um, but the idea is keep aware of keep that radar up. It's not your feelings, it's their feelings. So you become very aware, and then you can point out their feelings. A lot of times you say to people, even in business, you say, I can tell that you're feeling X, whatever it is, and I get it. It's this, I don't want to say trick, but it's this technique, it's this awareness of others that's going to help you become more identifiable. You are not the stranger. And in case of children here, you're saying, I get it, you're upset, and look at you. And okay, maybe you should get more upset because I don't know if that's working or not. And then you've now pointed out to them what their feelings are. You've forced them to reflect. And in that, you've changed the narrative from the focus on their feelings to the focus being on the awareness of their feelings and why. And now you've done something. Tip two. So obviously, be aware of emotions would be tip one. Tip two is narrative. You want to change a mood? Tell a story. Humor works great. Obviously, if you're trying to do some sort of serious, business project, report, or whatever, is not the place for humor. But in personal communication, when you are dealing with someone, face to face usually, get the little story out. This isn't my recommendation to you to tell what I did on summer vacation, but what it is just generate that metaphor. I said that in my last video. Make the person experience something on a personal emotional level, on that level they can relate to, and you're going to make that connection, and that's going to help you in your persuasive communication. Three, change the voices. Passive voice works really well. One of the areas that I don't really get into, we talked about it briefly. It came up in the video in week 2, and that is this idea of cultural use of language. Western Europeans, in particular French, German, English, that little corridor there, tend to say what you see here. Bob broke the chair. Um, she caused an accident. Denise dropped the glass. In other words, we instantly assign blame. And if you remember what Hayakawa talks about, um, even the use, he mentioned specifically, in court, like he's a dirty crook or there's the criminal. That injection of blame affects thinking. So you can actually think about it in another way. And if to continue my point, in more Latin countries, um, and I speak okay, decent Spanish, I suppose. Um, it's primer la problema. It's first the problem. First in when something is discussed, it's the chair was broken, the glass was broken, there was an accident. So just by changing that voice, you can really make a difference. If you remember back in week 1, we had semantics where I talk about literally flipping, you could say changing, the way the conjunctions and everything fit. Be aware of that too. Don't forget that part. It was early on in the course. But just the way the sentence structure and the voice comes out can really change things. Um, I put backfire, overplay the argument, especially when you err. Overplay their argument. This is a technique you can use where one of the things I teach in composition, I guess you could say here it comes up, is any argument that you have, that anyone has, will fall apart when it gets to its extreme. So if you say, yeah, Tiger Woods always wins, and he's a great golfer. I love golf. And then you say, really? He always wins. He wins every single game of everything. Well, no, I didn't say that. You almost force them back on their heels. The sun is hot. Oh, really? The sun is hot? As hot as a nuclear What is a nuclear explosion? As hot as the hottest stars in the galaxy? Well, no, not that hot. Well, it's cold outside. You could use the same thing. Really? As cold as 0 Kelvin? Well, no. Now we're getting scientific and I'm getting technical, and I'm going to bring this up in a second too. But you can use this. You can point out it's like say, okay, yeah, let's take your argument, and then you can overplay it, and usually that then makes the person reflect. And again, this is sort of the theme I'm going to make people aware of what they're doing, and instead of them being so focused on what their argument is, you have taken them off their pedestal somewhat, and you've now loosened things up. Now, ethically, again, we'll get to that. How you, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And again, humor works. Um, you don't have to say LOL with everything. I see that way too much now. So it's just a thing you can do. All right, deliberate argument. Make the audience believe your choice is what's best for them. So you're going to actually deliberate. You're actually going to say, here's what it comes down to. Let's bottom line this. And just the way you present it. Well, here's what you can do. You all can skip the quiz and take it next week when you forgot it, or you can just do it right now, even though you don't want to. It's still fresh in your mind. And I do this all the time at school, and people go, you know what, just give it to me. And my ethical motivations there are actually good, because I actually do believe that it would be better for them to take a quiz right away. Here's the other thing. Use the language of your audience. I want to talk about this in a second. Now, you remember per words and snarl words. Gets a little deeper as we get into social construction here, and you've actually done your experiments on this. But our language changes depending on the audience. I do not speak this way the way I am speaking now. I guess I sort of do, but when I'm on my boat in the summer, I might be a little more relaxed. I need to be more formal here. I would hope I'm building ethos here. And ultimately, the other thing you're trying to build is identification. If you can identify with your audience, and more importantly, if your audience can identify with you, there you go. So this is probably my favorite one. Redefine the terms. What do I mean by this? In other words, what you do is say, well, the real argument is this, and I have that typed up. In other words, you again, you knock someone off their rocker a little bit, and you say, well, yeah, okay, you want to argue about this, but actually we agree on that. The real problem is this. And somebody stops and they go, and instantly they're arguing that, where you've now set the new rules. uh, Donald Trump, love him or hate him, I was teaching some of his skills 10, 12 years ago, even before he even thought about running for president. He has this book, was it the How to Get Rich book? I don't remember which one it was. But he has a section on public speaking, and he has a section on arguing and rhetoric and business deals, and it relates to communication here. And he says something like, "I would often start a meeting by telling someone, you have bad breath. I just want to tell you that." And he says the person then was shaken. They came in the meeting like they were going to beat Donald, and now they've been put on the defense. Now that's not the same as saying, oh, the real argument here, but it's almost in the same category of saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this argument what I want to make it about, and that's it. Um, yeah, you have a good point there again, but what's really going on is this: Bill Clinton was a master of this, um, and I have that word technically. I'll get to status theory in a second. Uh, During his impeachment trial, he and his lawyers actually questioned the definition of the word "is." Look this up if you don't believe it. I'm older, obviously, than pretty much all of you. Uh, and, and the news media was stunned, because it's like, what are you talking about? The word is, the verb, to be verb is. In the third person, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how to redefine is, to be, the first verb learned in all languages. And he says, well, you got to define what is. And then, it's like, well, are you having an affair? Well, am I having an affair? That means right now. No, right now, technically I'm sitting here. Okay. It's almost like you're sitting at home going, oh, come on, I'm going to use that. Well, no, but just reserve this. You can use it. I'm just telling you, it's technique, and it, ethically, it stretches it, but that's Bill Clinton. Status theory. What this gets into, is kind of relates back to what we did our experiments on. Is you will notice groups, and many of the comments I made was about this, that people like to be in groups. So status theory just says we as people tend to put ourselves into a certain social strata. We like to define ourselves in groups. I talked about this 5-10 minutes ago here. Be aware of not categorizing people, but it's done all the time. We do it. And more importantly, in status theory, how this relates is we tend to go, well, we're better. Our group is better. Our Detroit Lion fans or whatever. I'm a Bears fan. Are Americans, are Christians, and you can go on and on. Uh, Social status really relates to lately socioeconomic status. So you can identify yourself as the common man, or we're a little better than them. It happens all the time. You need to be aware of it. You need to be aware of how you could possibly use it, but again, be very careful with this. This is, you have a skill you need to practice. I guess you would say is when you say the word we, you automatically are generating or making people aware of a status. There is now a strata that exists that you are saying we are we, and that means we are here. So it works. Again, just be a little careful with how you do it. So language use. Going back to language again, do not use the language of your opponent, but reverse it. So, in other words, what you do is you take their words from them. The best way to do this is look at when someone has an argument or has an idea, proposal that goes contrary to what you like. Find words in there that they are using to persuade. Don't use them back because now you're using their weapons, but rather find words that mean the opposite and use them. And then when it says repeat code words, it's connected to this. You can think about good rhetorical works, I have a dream. I have a dream that someday, look what Dr. King does. This repetition of that phrase gets in your head. It works. You can look this up on YouTube. That's a great tool. Look for repetition in rhetoric. I'm sure there's plenty of uses for this. And code words at times is something you'll see in politics. Um, I always think of Al Gore, who came up with the term lockbox. He's like, we need to create a lockbox. And he kept saying lockbox. And then everyone's just kind of walking around going lockbox, and no one even knows what he's talking about. So find those code words. Code grooming, what that talks about, and I have a little slide coming up here, I believe. Code grooming is, you know what grooming is? You're conditioning a crowd, and you are sending out literally a code that makes them identify with you through different language. In other words, if I had to sub, like I subbed for a few years, like 8 years ago, and they would like, you want to sub for kindergarten? I'm like, no, I don't. And then they would kind of force me to before I came up and started teaching at the high school level. And the code words there is you better talk about candy and naps and mom and dad, and and in a high school setting, it's going to be a little different. You're speaking their language with sports, and you're generating those metaphors. And then obviously, when I have adults like I do here, I guess I would do the same thing because I am using words like professional and academic and formal and elevated. We are elevated in our speech and so on and so forth. In a speech, you'll see George Bush speaks differently to women, and you'll get it a little better with that. Forget logos in big settings. So if you are in a big setting, if you got that big speech, if you got that big presentation, you better do the opposite of what I say to do for the reports here. Um, in the reports, I'll say, please have plenty of graphics and please have plenty of data and plenty of quotes and plenty of arguments. And that's all well and good because you're not writing some personal narrative to me. You need to set that balance tipped in a different direction, tip the scales a little bit in a large setting. Go back to what Michael Douglas does. He appeals to their patriotism. He appeals to their sense of greed and redefines it. You're going back to redefining. So I guess in a big setting, lower the logos, lower the facts, lower the don't bore people. That gets into that what they call the pedant stance. Okay, so this is this example here, which is better. They talk about W, the George W, who was the president. W would begin sentences with "I understand." He repeated words as peace and security and protecting. In other words, he looked at it, this is code grooming, to say, well, I'm speaking to women. Women, say what you want, tend to want security and protecting, nurturing, peace, softer, military, relent, whatever it takes, waver, not on my watch. And so, again, then the swaggering humor. Um, you can use those little phrases. Find little anecdotes. We don't want cliche in writing, but as I mentioned before, if you're going to use cliche, then make sure in writing that you put it in quotes or say, sorry I'm using the cliche, or to use a bad pun, or to use a cliche, but it actually fits. In other words, you tell people, I know it's a cliche, but it does work a lot of times in um, communication because, again, how people see things so differently that cliches and parables, metaphors, analogies, those myths, those communicate through the centuries, through the eras to us. So use that. Okay, so Tolman method. This is man. Basically, I don't want to get into this. You can look it up. But basically, what it means is when you're using quotes in writing, don't just throw a quote out there. Tell me why the quote is good, and then back up that support with another quote, and then tell me why that one supports the quote that supports your claim that supports the original quote. Sound confusing? Well, you can look at it like here. Right here, you can see there's a claim. You might have a little counter argument. You qualify it. You say this claim is right. Then you back it up with logical thinking. You back it up with other data, and then you back it up again with more speaking and then more quotes. Again, throw a quote or a stat, whatever your relevant data is, Blackboard 6, I think it is, you're doing it. Find those different areas, those different avenues that support your theory, and that's good research. And then don't just throw it on the wall. I always say, like, throw the baloney on the wall and hope it sticks. Don't do that. The same thing is true when you're arguing or presenting or doing anything in any communication. Back it up. And then after you back it up with your logic, in other words, the Groucho Marx, let me explain to you why this means what I tell you it means. After that, find another source to back you up, to say, it's not just my opinion. You don't maybe type that, but you're basically saying, here's another one. And then you tell the audience again. So it's a way of really reinforcing a point that you're making. So again, you have a claim. I always call them avenues of research, avenues of thinking. Like, what road are you going down to support your big argument, your big thesis, your whole paper, your presentation, whatever it is? But back it up. Tell people why your backing is right. Again, back it up again and kind of repeat that, and it makes it solid. So I don't want to spend too much on time on that. The Rats and Men chapter, the little section in the book, is great. I don't. It doesn't matter if you love Trump or hate him. It's this kind of connects again back to that theory of people want to be in a category. People identify with cliche. People identify with simplistic terms, I guess you would say, because it could be different for everybody, because is there a normal? I don't know. But when I think of normal, maybe I can think of a time back in Chicago when there was 2 murders a year in the 70s, and there were no fences, and it was a beautiful city. And so when someone says, let's get back to normal, or let's get back to the good old days, my mind goes there. I'm up in northern Michigan. There are going to be people that think normal means lower taxes, or the days before the big supermarket. Usually nostalgia is involved with this. um, uh, Make America great again. Then you had Michelle Obama getting herself in a lot of trouble saying, when was it ever great? And a lot of people took umbrage with that. So you can do the same thing. Again, be aware of that. So just remember to use the tools you're learning when practicing communication. I want to see where we are with time here. So almost 30 minutes. We get you out of here. But what the heck? You don't have to sit through an hour class. Remember, the ethical judgments are relative. So fill the puzzle piece. Remember that we are looking for truth. Um, I am not arguing that relativism is the norm, which is kind of odd. what I am arguing is that we have to recognize that what people consider as good, right, normal, all that is relative, and it depends on the context, where they are, who they are. So don't forget all that. Um, yes, you're trying to persuade, but ultimately you're also trying to get a truth, um, get to that good place. Um, and you can use them for many purposes. So choose wisely, be ethical. This I pulled up from Lumen Learning. Um, Pretty standard. You'll see this in business. You can probably, I actually saw this on GE's website once too for our business class. I think these are kind of standard, so I'll leave this PowerPoint up. But there's no, that red line is just, that's just a formatting. That's not anything special. But just little sort of standards, guidelines that actually work and that are good, sensitive to others' cultural values, give credit to others. Confidential information is huge. I can't tell you how many times, back in the day, I'd be teaching college freshmen, and I would have a mom or a dad come in and say, "Well, my son and daughter's been out for a week. Could you possibly give them a break on the homework? And could you tell me how they're doing?" And I just say, "Listen, we have FERPA law. This isn't high school. I cannot tell you. I ask permission of you students. Can I please use your work as models? Or at least I have what say disclosure. I like your work. I would like to use it as a model. It's ethical. I do not guarantee results. That's a great one. And of course, be honest and be accurate. Your ethics, your personal values could conflict with the company's ethics. And this is, I had commented on several papers, values, morals stemming from values are different than ethics. You think of morals come more of a personal, come more from a traditional, and ethics, usually you're talking about an organization. Now, that organization doesn't have to be business, it could be a society, it could be an area, but those two come to conflict, and I mentioned that before. So be ethical. Remember to cover yourself, okay? If you know the CYA, they love to talk about that in business, okay? You can Google that if you don't know. But it's so true. The problem with hearing that is people then say, "Oh, I can do whatever as long as I cover myself." That's not what it means. It means, I mean, in part, yes, you're covering yourself, of course. You're protecting your job, you're protecting your company. But it when I say cover yourself ethically, I literally mean to make sure nothing's going to come back to you. Nothing's going to harm you because, first of all, you want to keep your job. You want to keep your good status. You want to keep going and be thought of as a good person. So cover yourself with this stuff. Um, go back to what I said, I think, in week 2. Watch the emotional aspects of this. Before you send that email, take a break. Before you punch up that angry text or email, take a break. We used to say go smoke. I haven't smoked in many years, but and I don't advise smoking. But the saying, the phrase means step away, get away from the emotions. Okay, cover yourself. Don't be regretting that phone call, that email, that text. Make sure you are not promising anything you can't deliver. That's in here. Make sure that ethically, again, you are um, not giving too much away. You can say a lot without saying a whole lot, or with saying a little. I mean, I'm not being clear myself. Be aware that what goes on in your business, what goes on in your home, what goes on in your companies, whatever organizations, is your business. You can hint at elements like, well, we have a policy here. Like, okay, that's standard, but don't play all your cards. So again, this goes back to ethics. You have an organization, whatever it is, to protect, even if that organization is yourself, your family, whatever it is. So that's kind of where I am with that. So overcome the matrix by being open-minded. We saw this one before, and understand the symbols. In other words, you have a lot of stuff to navigate, and that's really all I have for you. As we're almost at 35 minutes here. So use your power wisely. You have a couple weeks, really, as you wrap up the book here. There's not much left. in terms of content. It's just a matter of all the work we're doing to get good practice. I will get all the comments with you, and then you will have this skill. You write that final paper, you're done, and you move forward. So thanks for watching this, and I will be in touch.